Hey everyone, this is Mike, and with patch 5.5 not being that far away anymore, we're soon going to be in another content drought for a little while until the next expansion comes out. Now, if you've ever been interested in trying out an ultimate, then this is also going to be the ideal time to give it a go, as there isn't going to be much else to do in the game, and you'll have plenty of time to sink into progging a fight of your choosing. So today I'm going to be answering a few questions that I get asked regularly about getting into ultimate, which one's the best one to start with, gear, etc. So I'm just going to take it one at a time, starting with how to get into ultimate. Well, the only thing I could say is just do it. Ultimate fights are a bit different from your usual endgame content, as they are faster, more punishing, they're longer fights as well, so there isn't really any way to practice for them outside of just going in there and getting your butt kicked. I've always procced ultimates in a static, but I do know that there is a puck scene for it on some data centers, so maybe that could be a way for you to go about it as well, although ultimate is something that will require a decent amount of your time, especially if it's your first one, so I would personally recommend finding a static. And of course, finding a static can be done using the normal channels like advertising yourself in Party Finder, recruitment discords, the recruitment Reddit, etc. As for the time it takes to clear one, that again varies a lot on the group that you're playing with. My very first ultimate, being Unending Call of Bahamut, took around 2.5 months of semi-hardcore prog, so raiding about 5 days a week, 3 to 4 hours a night, before we were able to clear it. The second one I did, Ultima Weapon, only took 3 weeks of doing similar hours, and then Alexander took me around 5 weeks, again, doing similar hours. So it really depends a lot on how good your group is and how quick they are able to get adjusted to the fight as well, because if this is your very first ultimate, you'll need to get used to the new pace of rapid fire mechanics, which is why the first ultimate is going to be the big hurdle, and then once you're able to clear that one, the other fights aren't going to be as big of a challenge because you're already used to the pace of the fights. As for which one to do first, I'll personally recommend either UCOP or Ultima Weapon for the simple reason that they are level 70 fights. Right now, with the job adjustments that we got in Shadowbringers and how gear scaling works at the moment, the two old fights have become a whole lot easier, and when I say easier, I don't mean that the mechanics aren't difficult anymore, but I mean that everything else has become easier. You've got more HP, so it's easier to survive, you do way more damage than you did back then, so the DPS check isn't that tight anymore, and a more lenient DPS check means that you can make more mistakes, because having 1 or 2 people die isn't going to mean that you'll automatically hit Enrage anymore. So because of those things, I would recommend one of the old ultimates. I think Ultima is generally considered the easiest one, maybe also partially because it is the shortest one, so that could be a good one to start with. As for gear, if you're planning on doing one of the level 70 ultimates, you can just go in with your level 80 gear that you have right now and let yourself sink down. You can optimize it for the highest crit, death, direct hit, whichever you want to prioritize, and then get your preferred skill speed, but you don't need to go and farm a level 70 gear set. Mainly because it is the sinking down of level 80 gear that gives you the advantages that I mentioned before of more HP and more damage. And then you'll of course also want to be bringing some food and potions. Again, level 80 is going to be better here than level 70 stuff. Technically, potions aren't really needed anymore for the level 70 ultimates because of how much easier the DPS check has become, but having them on hand to ensure that you can beat the DPS check is much better than not bringing a potion, failing the DPS check because you had 1 too many deaths, and then that will feel pretty bad afterwards, so just bring them just in case. As for Alexander Ultimate, you'll mainly be using some of the old raid gear mixed together with dungeon gear, as the raid gear is item level 470, dungeon gear is item level 475, so getting that tiny increase in item level is worth it if you want your best chance at clearing it. Of course, if you have current item level gear, like for example 500, 530, whichever it might be that you have access to right now, and you don't want to go and grind out a dungeon set, then you can just let yourself get item levels synced down, and it will also still work fine. I've cleared ultimates in all 3 of the ways of like using the old gear, just getting synced down in the current gear, and using a mix of old gear, new gear and dungeon gear. But the difference isn't really all that large. However, if you want to increase your chances at clearing as much as you can, then the dungeon gear is going to be the recommended, because that is just going to give you the highest DPS output possible, as well as having that HP and still giving you melt slots as well. So that's definitely the best that you can get. And then lastly, resources to learning the mechanics. Not everyone wants to go in blind and try to figure out things as you go, and there are also plenty of good resources out there for all 3 fights where you can just go in and learn everything that you need to know to come well prepared to try and clear the raids faster than if you were to just go in blind. There aren't that many visual guides out there that I personally know of, but there are a lot of written guides, like for example the Cleese guides, which are pretty good and which I personally used myself before to try and clear UCOP and Ultima Weapon. As for myself personally, I do have a long walkthrough for Alexander Ultimate that is in the same style as what you're used to from me from, for example, the Savage guides, but I don't have one for Ultima Weapon or for the Unending Coil of Bahamut. I do, however, still have my old clear POVs from back in Stormblood, as well as for the clear that I did of UCOP from the beginning of Shadowbringers, so if people would really like for me to add my walkthroughs to the pile of resources that are available right now, then I will consider starting work on those in the near future, so let me know in the comments down below or upvote a comment that is asking for it, so that I know how much of a demand there is for it, because if there's only a handful of people asking for it, then I'll probably not make them, but if there is a lot of demand for it, then I'll definitely start work on those very soon. Anyways, that's all I had to say for today, so I want to thank you for watching, I want to thank my Patreons for their support, and I'll see you in the next one.